Good morning, everyone. We're going to start today with a fun fact, which I know you love, because I love fun facts. The author of John's Gospel uses the word, the world, which is cosmos in Greek. Right, Penny? 78 times. The word, the world, shows up 78 times in John's Gospel, compared to 9 times in the Gospel of Matthew, 3 times in Mark, and 3 times in Luke. Of all the times this word, the world, is used in the New Testament, John makes up 42% of its uses. Just in today's Gospel alone, the word shows up 13 times in 13 verses. The world, the world, the world. One of the conclusions that has been drawn about John's Gospel, partially based on how often the word is used and how the word is used by the author, is that there's a duality between Jesus and the world. That there's some sort of oppositional relationship between those who believe in Jesus and the world that surrounds them. Even sometimes going so far as to think that the world is the enemy, the thing that defiles us. And the goal of the spiritual life, the Christian life, is to resist the world and its many evils. Just in these 13 short verses of today's gospel, it seems like Jesus is drawing a line in the sand between himself and the world, between the disciples and the world, even between us and the world. Just listen to some of these words from Jesus. I am asking on their behalf. I am not asking on behalf of the world, but on behalf of those whom you gave me. I have given them your word, and the world has hated them because they do not belong to the world, just as I do not belong to the world. He says that last part again, one sentence later. But to put Jesus' words from today's reading in a wider context, let's go back to the beginning, where John's gospel starts with the Word. In the beginning of creation, when the Word was with God and the Word was God. All the way back in the beginning of this gospel is where we find the first of those 78 uses of the world. John 1, 9 through 10, the true light, which enlightens everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world came into being through him, yet the world did not know him. Even in these first verses, the author of John's Gospel is calling us back even further, all the way back to the beginning of beginnings, the first in the beginning, where God created the heavens and the earth, and the Spirit of God moved over the face of the deep. And from the deep, God brought forth day and night, waters and lands, birds of the air and fish of the sea, and all the things that creep on the earth and under the earth, including humanity itself, and the moon and the sun and the stars, and even the blessed rest of the Sabbath. And finally, when God looked at all that had been brought forth in creation, God said, "It is good." The world that John speaks of, that was brought forth out of the deep, that was made through the Word, the world that the author of John refers to 78 times, that world is good. From the very beginning, it is good. So good, in fact, that in the 3rd chapter of John, Jesus says that he did not come to condemn the world, the goodness of creation, but to save it, to heal it, to make it well. So what are we to make of Jesus' words that he came to heal the world, that through the word the world was made, and yet he and the disciples, and even those who will believe because of their witness, are not of the world? While Jesus does say things in today's gospel that hint at an oppositional relationship between himself and the world, he also says things like this: I am not asking you to take them out of the world, but I ask you to protect them from the evil one. But now I am coming to you, and I speak these things in the world, so that they may have my joy made complete in themselves. What we see here is not Jesus setting himself and his disciples against the world, against the created order, which is good, as if the purpose of his life and ministry is to get people to transcend the world. He's not trying to tell his disciples that salvation means finally leaving the world behind, hovering over the craziness. As he says in the very last verse of today's gospel, as you have sent me into the world, so I have sent them into the world. And for their sakes I sanctify myself, so that they may also be sanctified in truth. As you have sent me, so I have sent them. So we are sent. Remember back to John chapter 3, I have come not to condemn the world, but to save it. As I was sent to save the world, to heal it, so I have sent you, and so we are sent. And even more than that, Jesus asks not just that they may be successful in this healing ministry, but that they may be sanctified in truth. To be sanctified, to be made holy, literally means to be set apart. But again, Jesus makes it clear that the goal of his ministry is not to leave the world behind, to be set apart from the world. The purpose of his ministry was not to get people to cut themselves off from creation. What then does it mean to be sanctified in Jesus' view, to be set apart, to be made holy? As he says, for their sakes I am sanctifying myself. To know what it looks like to be sanctified in truth, to take up the ministry of world healing, we need only look at the way Jesus was sanctifying himself in that moment. These words from Jesus come in his final moments with his disciples before his arrest. This is his parting prayer for his dearest friends as he anticipates his imminent suffering and death. This is the final moment of calm before the storm of betrayal and trial and denial. It will be his last chance to rest until he is laid to rest. So how is Jesus sanctifying himself? How is he setting himself apart? Not by leaving the world, not by extracting himself from the mess and chaos that surrounds him, not by walking away from the physical realities of oppression within which he and his people were living. Instead, Jesus walks further into the chaos. He sets himself apart, he sanctifies himself, not by leaving the world, but by diving headfirst into it. For Jesus so loved the world that he entered into the depths of its suffering, its oppression, its frustration, its messiness. And he set himself apart not for his own personal salvation, but for the salvation of the world, for all people, for the healing of the world, for the sanctifying of everyone and everything. He set himself apart not so that he could transcend a defiled world, but so that he could show with his very human body just how it might be healed. Jesus says explicitly that he is not asking God to take the disciples out of the world. His hope for their spiritual transformation, for the transformation of the universe, and our transformation is not that we remove ourselves from the world, from its frustrations, cut ourselves off from the messiness and the chaos, but continue over and over again to dive back into it. Because this sanctification, this process of being made holy, set apart, is not an individual act, but a communal one. Being made holy and whole, no matter what we may have been told, is not an individual pursuit. As Jesus says elsewhere in his prayer to God today, may they be one as we are one. May my joy be made complete among them. There is no joy. There is no sanctification, no holiness, no healing set apart from our communities, set apart from the world. But only by entering into the world, by remaining in the mess, by engaging in the discomfort and the uncertainty of our lives and the lives of our communities. 2 different times in Jesus' prayer today, we hear him say that the disciples do not belong to the world, just as he does not belong to the world. This, though, is just one possible way of translating that line. If we translated one little word, just 2 letters, slightly differently, we would hear Jesus say that he and his disciples, rather than not belonging to the world, are not outside of the world. In other words, they are not separate from the world. They are not trying to leave the madness, the frustration, the chaos. This begs the question then, what is separate from the world? What is outside of the world? Jesus refers to it in the prayer. It is the very evil from which he asks God to protect his disciples. The evil that Jesus speaks of, rather than some amorphous concept of darkness, is embodied not in a character or an individual, but in the systems of the world that oppress and destroy and cause suffering. This evil is not something inherent in the world, but is that which stands outside of the world. It is the systemic evil of oppression which removes a select few from the suffering of the world at the expense of the many and the perpetuation of that very suffering. These forms of oppression are what ultimately stand in opposition to creation outside of the world, removed from the needs of the earth, the messiness of life, and the people of the world, set apart not in holiness, but in destruction. To make salvation an individual pursuit of separating from the world would be to perpetuate that evil, not transcend it. In contrast, Jesus was and is infinitely in the world. That is where he has called his disciples to remain. And that is where we are called to remain, to abide, in one of his favorite words from this part of John. Because that is where God is. That is where connection is. That is where healing and salvation and sanctification are found, in the messiness of our communities, in the frustrations of our relationships, in the challenges that we face when we leave those doors. Jesus came to save, to heal the world, not to remove people from it, not to give them a pathway out, but a gate further in. May we abide deeply both in the Word and in the world. May we commit to our communal wellness and not just our personal salvation. May we find our joy complete in one another and not just in our personal pursuits and glories. And may we always remember our call to remain committed to and responsible for the healing and thriving of all people and live into the infinite goodness of the world that surrounds us.